Hello, Diablo community. Welcome to another Diablo 4 developer update live stream. My name is Adam Fletcher. I am the community lead for the Diablo franchise, and of course, I'm joined by some special guests here today. I'm joined by Dan and Madeline. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure thing. I'm Dan Tangway. I am the lead designer for Season 3, Season of the Construct.
Cool.
And I'm Madeline James, and I'm one of our quest designers on Diablo 4.
And what you guys probably don't realize is, or maybe you do, if you watch these streams often, you'll most definitely realize we're in a completely different set today. Yep. We're actually live from Albany, New York, at Blizzard Albany, and we're doing the stream up here. And so now we have two different sets. We have one in Irvine and one in Albany, and we actually have another guest that will be joining us today. And it's a very familiar face to all our live streams. That's Mr. Adam Jackson. He's live from the Irvine studio. Hi, Adam. Good to see you. And we'll be talking to you soon because we're going to be talking about balance and classes and everything. So we'll be joining Adam here shortly. But we have a lot to talk about. A lot with Season 3. We announced it earlier this week with Season of the Construct. We've seen a lot of cool feedback and great feedback from players related to the trailer and everything that released out earlier this week. But we did want to talk a little bit, before we jump into Season 3 and those items, we do want to talk a little bit about, the new year and obviously going through the holiday and Season 2, where we had Season of Blood, where players got to jump in, of course, fight Lord Zir, jump into different blood harvests and everything. And what was awesome to see with Season of Blood was, or Season of Blood, is that we ended up getting really great feedback from players about how they enjoyed, some of the aspects with it. And, just hearing that feedback has helped us a whole lot in terms of how we're going to build out Diablo 4, especially in future seasons. And one big thing that, we introduced was the boss ladder, with, of course, Uber Duriel being part of it.
Yep.
And it was a good opportunity for players to kind of target farm Uber uniques, which was really great. And we got to see a lot of players actually obtain Uber uniques this season. And I will say, we plan on having the boss ladder again for Season 3 with some tweaks, which we'll talk about here shortly with the stuff that we're going to be talking about with quality of life changes and everything. And of course, we had Abattoir of Zir. This was a new endgame feature that we ended up announcing at BlizzCon. And we introduced right before the holidays for players to check out. And, I do want to give a huge shout out to the community because we got a lot of feedback about Abattoir of Zir. And this feedback is really important because we are planning on additional endgame activities in the future. I will say that Abattoir of Zir will not be present in Season 3, but based off the feedback we ended up hearing from players, we'll have more news to share in the future about, maybe next iterations or growth from what we've learned with that endgame feature with Abattoir Zir. So thanks again to the community for all the great feedback with that. And then we have Midwinter Blight, which was our first event, our first holiday event in Diablo 4. Where players got to actually collect really, really cool cosmetics. If you wanted to carry some bells and race around on your back or on your weapons and everything like that, you had the opportunity for that. Another good opportunity for our players to actually provide feedback, because this was our first holiday event. And so we're actually going to have future holiday events. You guys will hear about one pretty soon in the future. And based off of a lot of great feedback we got, you'll be seeing that feedback applied to some of these future events that we have coming forward. And of course, at the end of the year, we ended up going over kind of all the big stats since Diablo 4 launched, and a ton of people have joined Diablo 4 to slay demons with us in Sanctuary, and a lot of people have died as well. And some of these stats, these numbers have only grown since we posted these late last year. And of course, we had 37 million people died at the Butcher. Now more, for sure, since we ended up having that. We've had over 1 trillion monsters killed, which is absolutely crazy. And, lots of hardcore deaths for people who choose to play a little bit more risky and play hardcore specifically. And our two most popular classes being the Sorcerer and the Necromancer. Not too surprised on the Necromancer. Necromancer is a fan favorite, has always been a fan favorite with D2 and D3. I actually, funny enough, I might actually be playing Necromancer here for Season 3. I don't know what you guys were planning on playing for Season 3, but
The team makes fun of me. I play Swark every single season. That's my favorite.
I played Swark last season too, so I don't blame you.
Well, I've been meaning to play Druid, so I might do that.
There we
Buck the
go.
trend there.
There we go. I did Druid in season 1. I did Sork in season 2. Feeling Necromancer in season 3. So I think that's going to be my choice there. But so it was great to see all the numbers and all the stats from Diablo 4 since launch. But today we are here to talk about season 3, Season of the Construct. It's arriving January 23rd. Dan, do you want to give us a quick little rundown?
Sure, yeah. So Season of the Construct is packed with a lot of content. And so there's a lot of things we're going to cover coming up. I mean, the first thing we're going to talk about is our all-new quest line that delves beneath the sands of Kyrgyzstan. Nothing good happens beneath the sands of Kyrgyzstan, so that's where we're headed. And in addition to that, as you've seen from a lot of the promotional materials, we are now introducing a seasonal companion called the Seneschal Construct. And that is something that you can upgrade and really kind of round out your builds in new ways. In addition to that, we have a couple of new repeatable activities. The first is the Vaults, which is an all-new dungeon type. And the second is Arcane Tremors, which is a new overworld activity. And last but surely not least, in terms of the Season 3 package, is the Gauntlet and leaderboards. And those are coming pretty soon. But we'll give you a bit of a tease right now, I think.
Yeah, so I know a ton of stuff for season 3.
Yeah.
This is most definitely the biggest season yet for Diablo 4, with a lot of content. And as you mentioned, questline and story being the first thing that we wanted to dive into.
Yeah.
Madeline, I think this is a good opportunity to
Yes.
talk to us a little bit about what we can expect for the questline for season 2.
Absolutely. So as Dan mentioned, we have a new quest line for season 3. In it, you are going to assist the mage Ayujan to purge the demon Malphus from the vaults of Zoltan Kuhl. Malphus has taken over the vaults, turned them into his own little kingdom, and has turned the hazards and the constructs inside of them against their makers. I think a good question to start with is kind of why constructs. It's a little bit of a departure from seasons past. You know, season 1 dealt with malignancy, and season 2 dealt with vampires, both stemming from Lilith's influence. But Sanctuary is such a big place, and so many different stories and lore, where present-day Sanctuary is kind of the Dark Ages. We've had, thousands of years of different technology and magic, and this is one of those stories. We spent a lot of time discussing as a team what we even wanted to do for season 3. And the story team really fell in love with mage clans. We delved into a lot of Diablo lore. We delved into the Sin War books. We delved into the Roderick Vault, etc. And the mage clans, for people that don't know, were these ancient mage societies that really were expertise in certain levels of magic. And we love the Visurai. They're typically the bad guys, typically delve into demotic magic, even though they're not, traditionally evil per se. And Visurai created constructs. They took machinery and their demotic magic and made these soldiers or these guards. Our protagonist, Ayujan, is not technically Visurai. He's part of the Ennead clan with Zoltan Kuhl. But their goal was to take these idea of constructs and make them their own and, do them in a different way.
Yeah, and Zoltan Kuhl is kind of a familiar face
He
for everyone
is.
in Diablo.
He's a cool dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Definitely pun intended.
Pun intended, yes.
Zoltan played a part in the Diablo 3 story, and of
Yes.
course we saw him in Diablo Immortal as well.
Yes, Zoltan was one of the original Haradrim. Good old Uncle Tyrael gave him the original Soul Stones. It's like, hey, I trust you, take care of them. Zoltan went a little bit off script, and he's like, what if I made these better? And so he created his Dark Soul Stone, which was his own kind of flawed attempt at ending the Eternal Conflict. It didn't go quite as he expected, and the rest of Haradrim said, we don't really like what you're doing. You got to get out. So they killed him. We're too frightened of you. But Zoltan and Ayujan knew each other in their youth and became business partners and eventually friends. And they shared this vision of, if we can create our own version of constructs and create this alternate power source that's not using demonic magic, the loom. These constructs can fight heaven and hell, and humanity can flourish. Unfortunately, it didn't go as expected. They couldn't get it right. And Zoltan was just like, you know what? I'm going to move on to bigger and greater things. This is a failure. Let's move on. And Ayajan was like, no, we have something here. Let's keep going. And unfortunately, that created a rift in their friendship. And that rift allowed for the demon Malphus to infiltrate their work. Malphus is a demon that you're going to encounter in the quest line and then fight an Uber version of him later in the season. He's a little bit different than our typical demon. You think of, big scary guy with horns. Like I said before, we took inspiration from Sin War, and they have a lot of different types of demons. They have different abilities, different shapes. One of them is like this stone liquid mass with a mouth on top. And so the original Malphus was like this red mist, and that allowed him to kind of sneak into corners that he wasn't supposed to. Malphus is a named demon, and he's one of terror, but he's very unimportant in the hierarchy of hell, and that kind of bothers him. We joked around on the team that he had a desk job in hell. So when he found the opportunity to sneak into Sanctuary and to corrupt the vaults, he's like, this is my time to shine. This is my kingdom. I'm going to rule it. And he did that successfully for many, many years. And he might have gotten away with it forever, except he was a little bit too prideful. He's like, I'd like to sneak out and leave the vaults.
Yeah, he's not satisfied with the vaults. He now wants to start trying to take over Sanctuary itself.
And that's where the player comes in.
Yeah.
So I think we have footage of the quest line, the early parts. You are going to start in Gaia Cool, where Malphus's influence has seeped in. Villagers and demons don't typically go well. I can't even imagine their insurance rates. But they hire you and they're like, hey, something's going on, something up north, please figure it out for us. And so you find the first vault and you delve into it to try and get a sense of what's going on. And these are where you're going to start seeing the first hostile constructs that Malphus has corrupted, and find your own construct. You start finding pieces of it. You're going to keep traveling through, and eventually you're going to find Ayajan, who is in a less perfect than ideal situation under Malphus's influence. You eventually free him. He's like, thank you so much. I don't even know what's going on, but let's figure this out together. And he fixes the Seneschal construct for you. He's like, you're probably going to need this as we delve into and force Malphus out.
Yeah, and here we're seeing like part of the quest line, like obviously building up and kind of creating your own Seneschal construct. Yeah.
Now I think we have footage of the Malphus fight as well.
Oh yeah, we can jump into that.
So Malphus is our first stationary boss. He uses the environment, the hazards in the room, as well as his glaive to smack you around. There are different elements in the boss fight that are going to periodically switch. Like I said before, he's this red mist, but for this fight, he is possessed the largest construct he could find, the Guardian, to fight you, and the loom is in the background.
Yeah. So imagine then Malphus has pretty much become like the embodiment. It's the vault itself, and the vault is now coming alive to try and kill you.
When you delve into the vaults, it's definitely going through his literal body.
Yep.
He definitely wants you out. He doesn't want you in there. He's going to he'd throw everything in the kitchen sink at you.
Yep.
We also have footage of our new seasonal town, the Gate Hall. This is kind of the gateway between the vaults and the upper world. You're going to go through it in the quest line, and then it is going to turn into a town for you to use. Has a waypoint, so easy travel. Most of the vendors that you know and love, you can see here that they're actually construct vendors that Ayajan has fixed for you to help you out. And here you're going to be accessing the vaults. You can also access them in the overworld if you choose so. So it should be a really convenient place for you to visit and turn into your main hub for the season.
Yeah, we expect a lot of players will be hanging out here in the gate hall, since all your vendors will be here. It'll be easy access to the vaults and everything. So kind of the new hub specifically for Season 3. So Yeah, sounds really
excited.
cool. Yeah, really excited for the quest line and story for season 3. Obviously, we talked about seneschal constructs and how that's actually going to be a big part of the storyline. People have been talking about it all this week with, seeing the footage of like, wow, it looks like we have these little companions with us now for season 3. So, Dan, can you talk us a little bit about what seneschal constructs will be for players?
So the seneschal construct is a seasonal companion. And the seasonal companion is kind of the embodiment of your power chase for the season. So every season we try to develop a new type of power chase, and power is really important to our players. Obviously, this is a game about becoming super powerful and killing lots of demons, and we're always trying to find new ways to do that. So we really wanted to stretch ourselves this season and find a way that players hadn't seen before. And so that is how the seneschal came into being. Now, the seneschal is this little construct, well, maybe not so little, but it follows you around, and it has different skills and abilities.
And I will note, you can pet your construct, your
The most
seneschal
important
construct,
part.
but
Yes.
you have to be able to pet it. So yes, you
Absolutely.
can. Important.
Yeah. And so you can have 2 skills on your seneschal construct. Those are given to the construct using what is called a governing stone. And governing stones are these semi-precious stones that you can find throughout your adventures in Season 3. They drop in a lot of those repeatable activities I mentioned, which we'll cover soon. And there's lots of different types. I think there's about 12 that you can slot in. We weren't satisfied with that, though. Because, 12 skills, it's cool. Don't get me wrong, but we wanted to allow players really to modify those skills however they saw fit. And so we've also developed 27 different tuning stones, another type of stone, that you can slot in then to modify that skill. And so you've got those 2 governing stones, and then each governing stone has 3 different tuning stones that can modify it and just create really wild combinations of powers that will allow players to experiment how they see fit. And so kind of with that breadth of powers, then you've got a lot of different options for being able to kind of round out your build and create new types of ways to kill demons.
Awesome.
So,
that's very cool. It sounds really cool.
Yeah.
And I think we might actually have
I
some
think we
examples
do.
and footage of what some of these would be.
so let me tell you what's going on here. So we've brought up our construct menu, and this is in the inventory UI, but it's its own separate UI, so your construct is not going to take up your traditional inventory space. And this construct has 2 governing stones equipped right now. One is called Focus Fire, which was that beam of fire that was coming out. The other one is called Lightning Bolt, and you can see it shooting some lightning bolts. Like I said, 2 skills, not too bad. You're killing some folks here. But we wanna amp things up a bit. So in addition to being able just to get stones as drops from activities, you can also craft stones. And so we've gone to our gate hall here, and we're crafting a new stone. We're going to see what we get. In this case, it's a pummel stone, a governing stone. I already have that skill, so it's just going to count towards XP, towards leveling up pummel. And I'm going to kit out my seneschal a little bit different. So we've got Focus Fire, and I think the first thing we're going to add is Voluminous Support. Fancy way of saying that it's going to increase the area of effect for your attacks. We're also going to add Electrocution. Now, even though Focus Fire is a fire attack, Electrocution is going to add some lightning damage to it, and it's also going to add a little bit of chance of stun. And so now we're dipping our toes into this crowd control. And then finally, we're going to add Arcing Support. And Arcing Support's really cool because Arcing Support allows your abilities to chain. And so now let's see what that power is going to look like when we bring it back up. All right, so here now you can see that Focus Fire is chaining amongst enemies. You can see that some of them are getting stunned, little electricity around them, and it had a bigger area of effect. Similarly, if we were to apply some of these to the lightning bolt attack, let's say we gave it multi-shot in that arcing support. Now it can just blast through enemies. So yeah, it's
so
got a lot of options.
So we're kind of seeing some examples of what players can potentially do with their seneschal constructs and actually make adjustments and modify them to kind of suit your specific playstyle. I think a big question is like, can you actually add, maybe some status effects or things like that? Like, can you potentially add in a tuning stone that may make enemies like vulnerable, for instance?
Yes, absolutely. So again, we wanted to give all of you a lot of different options to play with. We want this to be a toy that you can experiment with. And so that means that, some of the examples we showed were more damage dealing, where the seneschal is doing the damage. But then we also want to give players the ability to just kind of set up, enemies for you to go in and, land the killing blow. So there are a lot of different support stones that can make things vulnerable, bleed things, electrocute them, chill them. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, pretty much any of the, the verbs in the game.
So your possibilities are massive with what you can do with your seneschal. And one thing, this is actually something that Sean White, who was in the video, our Dev Insights video before the actual start of the stream, pointed out yesterday on social media to players that were asking a little bit more, or for more clarity on some items. But the seneschal construct actually does scale 1-to-1 with like specific like secondary type of stats, or even things that are associated with your actual character. So things like attack rating or crit chance, for instance.
Yeah, it was very important for the seneschal to feel as if it was an extension of you, if you wanted to be that. Also, we really didn't want to get, a seneschal that was just outclassed when you got to level 100, because then where's the fun, right? So yes, absolutely, the seneschal will become more powerful as you become more powerful.
Awesome. Yeah, so seneschal constructs obviously playing a huge role, and with the construct and you now being able to customize and change things up for how you want to play, there's new challenges that are associated with the season 3 season of the construct, and one of them is vaults, which I know we do want to dive a little bit more into specifically. Do you guys want to talk a little bit more about vaults?
Sure. Vaults are a new dungeon for the season, and we have 4 types of vaults. Like I said before, they are this extension of Malphus, and because of that, he has turned the hazards inside of them into enemies in and of themselves. We wanted to explore the fantasy of a environment that was hostile and it was ready to kill you often, and so they're filled with hazards that spinning fires of death, floor plates that come alive, arrows that shoot out of the walls, and with our construct enemies. I think we have some footage of the vaults as well to kind of walk you through it. Constructs in them per usual. These, because they're so hostile and dangerous, we wanted them to have a good, be lucrative and be risk reward. So we have a lot of different loot. I think a little bit later in the video, there's like an explosion of gold, and that's just going to be common. And our dungeon designers, typically with the dungeon experience, you get a pop-up and you're like, okay, it's telling me to kill all the enemies, I know what to do. The dungeon designers wanted to explore a little bit of I'm not sure what I'm going to be experiencing, I have to go find my objective. And so the objectives are vague a little bit on purpose, but typically vaults end in this, what we call informally as a death room, a danger room, where everything is being thrown at you, all the traps from the vault accumulated in one large room. So yeah, we're really excited. It's a bit of new gameplay, dodging traps, and this is one of the danger rooms, for example. We're really excited to get people to dive into this and experiment.
And obviously with vaults, tons of traps here.
Yes.
I know that there's some gameplay associated with kind of avoiding them, and rewards associated with those as well.
Yes, absolutely. So certainly Madeline has outlined a lot of the risks associated with vaults. I mean, those hazards are going to be pretty unforgiving. But if we're putting a lot of risks in front of you guys, we want to make sure there's a lot of rewards too. So you saw a little bit of it already with some of the basic chests in the vaults have been souped up, so they're more rewarding than those chests you'd find in other dungeons. But there's another mechanic at play too, and that's called Zoltan's Warding. So as you enter a vault, after you've cleared some of Malphas's influence out of the vault, you can find the statue of Zoltan Kulle, because of course Zoltan Kulle,
He has to have a statue.
he's got to have a
himself.
statue in every vault. I mean, that's just how he rolls, right? So if you're able to find a special, it's called a Pearl of Warding, you can offer that to the statue, and in return, the statue is going to grant you Zoltan's Warding. This is a buff. It doesn't really help your combat too much, but what it does is it gives you additional rewards, and you can see right there, there's kind of that glowing one to the side with the icon. That is a ward-woven chest that contains extra rewards if you're able to keep that buff. And so as you get better and better at the vaults, you're going to start basically challenging yourself to keep the buff. And you keep the buff by avoiding the hazards. And so the gameplay really becomes focused on trying to make sure that you're moving as cleanly as possible through the vaults, in addition to fighting the enemies in order to get the highest payout.
And I if you make like mistakes, like I know I will make mistakes.
Yes,
like
I will too.
I am a person that gets hit by like every single trap under the sun. Are there ways of being able to like help mitigate like some of those types of mistakes?
You can have multiple stacks of buffs. So one pearl is, I believe, 3 stacks.
Yeah.
And so if you want to go grind the overworld activity to get the pearls, you're like, okay, I have a bunch of stacks. I have a really good chance. And if you don't make it and no stacks left, there were 2 chests at the end, you still always get a loot. But the super great loot comes from Zoltan's Warding.
Yep.
Got it. So so there are opportunities for players to actually get multiple chests.
Yes.
And you can actually have multiple stacks of warding to essentially create a buffer if you know
Yes.
you're planning on playing a little bit more sloppy.
If
or
you
something
really
like that.
really want to brute force your way through, you can, but you've got to invest a little more time.
Got it. No, that makes sense. That's great to know. And like I guess with the Pearls and the Overworld activity, I know that has like. To earn those types of buffs, like how do players actually end up doing
Right, so that's our second repeatable activity that I'd mentioned, which is the Arcane Tremors. And so Arcane Tremors is a new type of overworld activity that's really localized around the entrances of the vault. So remember how we were talking about Malphas, and Malphas's sights have become grander now that he controls all the vaults. And so all the constructs are starting to spill out into Sanctuary and cause trouble. Additionally, some new types of hazards have unearthed and are starting to appear around the vaults. And so it's your job to every so often go in and beat back, all these construct invasions or incursions, essentially, that are creating the tremors. And so I can talk a little bit about this activity. We can queue up some video for that too. And so here you've arrived and you see basically a roaming band of constructs. And, obviously it's your job to go in and kill them and send them back to where they came from. But that's not all you need to do within this activity. What you're looking to do to really advance the activity is look for these cores that you can use to draw out Malphas's most powerful lieutenants. And so you're getting a core here from an obelisk, which is an overworld hazard, and you've got to make sure to not get hit by that. And if you collect enough cores, you're able to deposit them in a brazier, which you can see on screen here glowing. And the brazier is a signal that you are now challenging one of the heralds of Malphas. And the herald of Malphas you see appearing right there. You and hopefully a bunch of other of your friends will, gang up and defeat the herald of Malphas. Get some cool rewards in addition to those pearls that we were talking about before, which you can then use to supercharge your rewards elsewhere.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know like this being an overworld activity, one thing that, and this is based off of feedback that we've gotten from the community as well, even with season of Blood, there was Blood Harvest, which were overworld activities, and now there's kind of activities everywhere. And they all have different various rewards for the player, whether that's vaults, whether that's doing some of the activities on the overworld for this season. You have opportunities of actually being able to get rewards kind of all over the place.
Yeah, our intention is for season 1, you kind of stayed in tunnels, and
Yeah.
then season 2, you kind of stayed in the overworld most of the time. We didn't want to make the players feel like they're stuck and they can only stay in one place and this is it. So the intention is you do some dungeons, you do some overworld activities, maybe do some bounties along the way. You should feel like you're mobile and not, hey, I have to stay here for the season.
Yep.
Yeah, and just another thing that I know we briefly touched on, which was vaults and how there are nightmare variations of that.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's something that is additional to just going through vaults as well. So.
Yep. Yeah, the vaults are fully dungeons in that respect. And so we have the ability and have made nightmare versions of all of these dungeons. And the nightmare versions of the dungeons obviously have more difficult combat, but they also have a lot more rewards. So those chests we had talked about before, the ward-woven chests, you actually get more of those as you advance in the nightmare system. So then your vault runs become even more and more rewarding in that case.
Yeah, and like, how would you access something like that specifically?
Right. So we're going to use the Nightmare Dungeon Sigil system, but we've created a way that the game can now award unique seasonal sigils, and in this case, they're called vault sigils. And so we did that because, for those folks who really want to focus in on vault play, you can earn the vault sigils, and now you can target farm the vaults instead of leaving it up to random chance.
Very cool.
Awesome. One last dungeon, the
yes.
mega uber dungeon. It's kind of it's very large. It's the best features of all the other vaults put into one, and that is where Malthus lives. And so you will be questline, you'll defeat him, and then uber version of him post questline for the rest of the season.
And so there is an Uber version of Malthus that is even more challenging than the Quest version. And he kind of sits parallel to the current boss ladder. So you don't need to do him for the boss ladder, but it's certainly going to be a bonus for you if you do.
Awesome. So yeah, way more additional content in this season, and we have a lot of different ways of being able to play and take your character. You can do it activities on the overworld. You can actually use those activities to help you out in the vaults. You can do nightmare variations of the vaults. We have Uber vaults now, or with a larger, more difficult vault with a new boss here for season 3 as well. And this is just a little bit of what we have for season 3 with, of course, we have seneschal constructs, which will be around with you all the time. And with that, we, of course, have one additional component to season 3.
That's right.
And that's with the gauntlet and leaderboard. And I will caveat, I know we mentioned this in the blog earlier this week. So the gauntlet and leaderboard are actually not going to launch at the start of this season. And that's really because, we want players to actually go through the season and actually grow and learn the season with their character before we actually launch the leaderboards. So we will have information on when we actually do launch Gauntlet and leaderboards really soon. But Dan, I know, wants to kind of dive deeper into what leaderboards are and what the Gauntlet is for players so they have a better idea.
Yeah, so a lot of you saw a taste at BlizzCon of what the Gauntlet and the Trials leaderboards are going to be. And so we can go in a bit more depth here and hopefully start to answer some of your questions. So the Gauntlet is another new dungeon type. The Gauntlet is something that unlocks with the overall leaderboard feature in World Tier 4. And basically, that means that it's targeting more of your in-game players at this point. Folks who have really decided on a build, they're starting to really round it out. It's become more powerful, and now they want to prove their might. Not just to themselves, but obviously to show off and have bragging rights. So the Gauntlet itself, new type of dungeon, is kind of based around 3 different principles. The first is that it is fixed seed. The second is that it is non-linear. And thirdly, like I said, it's there to prove your might. And so I'm going to kind of unpack that a little bit. Fixed seed means really that it is trying to be as fair as possible for everyone. Everyone gets the same gauntlet every week. And so you're not fishing for, the best roll of a rift or something like that.
Yeah.
It's really a level playing field at this point. And let me tell you, that was kind of hard to do. Our game is not very good at doing one thing. It loves to do random things. But in this case, we felt competition demanded that it be fair.
Yeah.
Nonlinear is really all about how the dungeon is laid out. It is not a dungeon where you travel from the beginning to the end. It's not about trying to get to the end as quickly as possible. It's about the choices you make while you're within that dungeon. And so the layout basically allows you to develop all manner of strategies. I mean, when we had people testing the dungeons, the gauntlets, there would be arguments over, or not even arguments, sometimes people would just kind of say, what was the best path you took? Oh, I think I can do better than that. And so a lot of it is trying to figure out your way through the dungeon each week. And then finally, proving your might is about killing enemies and gathering what we're calling proofs of might, and then trying to get the highest score possible. So it's not about just going fast. Certainly going fast helps. But it's really about how effective and efficient are you at combat. And that's going to be reflected in your score. And so at the end of a gauntlet, you're going to get a score. And you're going to say, okay, can I do better than that? And we're going to say, well, we've got a couple targets you can try and hit, but really you're going to be shooting for those leaderboards.
Yeah.
But let's circle back on strategies a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think we've got a little bit of video to help with that. So here's the gauntlet right here. It, for all intents and purposes, looks like a normal dungeon. But we said, again, it's World Tier 4. It's targeting level 100 players. So we're going to throw a dungeon boss at you right at the
Why not?
start.
Yeah, and I will note, I know we're mentioning level 100. Technically, you can do
Yes.
Gauntlet before level 100. It's just probably more efficient to do it at level 100 just because it is an end game activity and it'll be challenging.
I mean, if you think you're ready to tackle the gauntlet below level 100, by all means. It's not tuned that way. And so here, you're fighting, the Tomb Lord, and he's pretty powerful, but you're more powerful. In that case, you defeated him. Now, the cool thing about defeating that boss is it doesn't drop loot, it drops a shrine. And that shrine can then be used as a power-up to, further increase your power within the gauntlet. And there's other types of new shrines within the gauntlet, too. We just hit previously here a pillar of proving, and that's a shrine that actually respawns all the enemies around you. Now, why would you want to do that? Because you want to kill them again and get their score, right? So we've got the pillar of proving, we've got the pillar of glory, which is a way to basically get a multiplier on your score. And we've even got chests scattered all throughout the dungeon that you can earn keys for. And you see keys up in the corner on the HUD there. And those keys give you even additional score. So a lot of the strategy of a gauntlet is, as a solo player at least, trying to find the most optimal path through it and use that as a way to, take your really cool build and get the highest score possible.
And something we saw in the footage, obviously the first thing we ran into was a boss, a Tomb Lord right there. And so you could technically take that Tomb Lord further into the dungeon if you want to.
Yeah. You're not stuck in the room with them.
You're not stuck in the room.
You can draw that Tomb Lord right next to another shrine and do a combo and then start building up even higher score there.
Exactly, and so that's the thing I think with gauntlets, we're going to start to see some really, and because they change weekly and these leaderboards will be weekly, we're going to see players kind of create different combinations of what's the best way of optimizing for the best score possible, taking advantage of the shrines, taking advantage of the chests, taking advantage of should I drag a bunch of enemies over here just because I know I'll have a shrine ready and stuff like that. So it's going to actually be really interesting to see, and I think it adds even more complexity to the idea once you start adding additional players to it as well.
Yeah, no, we had a lot of fun testing this, especially in parties, because parties can then start dividing and conquering what you need to do in order to get that high score. And so we expect party scores to be, frankly, ridiculous.
Parties, got to play with friends there for that and stuff. And so I know with leaderboards, when you're looking at leaderboards, I think we actually have an image of the leaderboards here, just a quick throw up here, but you can see based off of how leaderboards are, there is an overall leaderboard for players, but then you have the ability of actually being able to filter by class, so you can see where you are within your own class.
Yeah, so each class does have a unique ladder, and that's those first 5 icons you see right there represent each of those classes if you're playing solo. And that was really important to us because we were talking about that component of fairness that we want to make sure that the competition is a level playing field. We understand that a ball lightning sork, for example, probably shouldn't be compared to a rogue or something like that. And so we allow each class to compete independently. And then there are also ladders for each of the different party sizes, because obviously a 4-person party probably is going to be able to cover more ground than a 2-person party. And so that actually creates 8 ladders with leaderboards right there. And then we also multiply that by 2 because we have separate ladders for our hardcore players, because they are well, they're competing on hardcore mode. They should get their own ladders.
Exactly.
And then we also have filters and leaderboards for the different platforms.
Yeah, so you can actually compare yourself. If you're playing on Xbox, you can compare yourself to other players on Xbox. Same thing for PC, which is great to see. Like, we had the option of being able to kind of really filter out and see where we stack against other players in the leaderboard.
And that all gets rolled up into a global leaderboard as well. And all of those leaderboards we mentioned, you are also able to filter by friend and by clan if you want to be able just to see the people you're familiar with and not compete with kind of the community at large.
Yeah, so it's catered and customized to like allow players to actually really get into like almost like a granular type of look of how they may compete against, just maybe everyone, or maybe just everyone on Xbox, or maybe just your friends, or maybe just people in your clan, which is really cool to see. And of course, with leaderboards and tackling leaderboards, as you mentioned, it is a separate dungeon. There are kind of rewards associated with leaderboards as well.
That's right. So, be straight up here, though. The ultimate reward of a leaderboard is glory and bragging rights.
Exactly.
And so, only the top 1,000 players during a week are going to be able to get on the leaderboards. And it's going to be a pretty big accomplishment, but we got to do a little bit better than that. And so not only do we have the weekly leaderboards, we have the Hall of the Ancients, which is the top 10 players from every ladder each week get written to the Hall of the Ancients. Now, unlike the weekly leaderboard, the Hall of the Ancients don't reset. And so that is a permanent record of everyone who is the best of the best each week, each season. And it's not going to ever get erased, going to be there forevermore.
So yeah, you always have bragging rights if you ever want to show to other people, like, even if you come back like in a later season or something, you can always go like, trust me, I know what I'm doing type of thing. Yeah.
But we've got some additional rewards too. We've got some neat cosmetics for folks who, maybe don't hit the Hall of the Ancients, but they hit another threshold on the leaderboards. And we've also introduced another type of reward called seals. Now, I like to think of myself like I could compete, but I know better than that. I am never going to be ranking on those leaderboards ever. And so the seals are meant for players, frankly, like me, who just, not ready for the leaderboards yet. And so what the seals are is, let me describe it this way. So we've got that ladder we were describing, right? And each rung of that ladder is going to have a seal associated with it. And so as you get better and better each week for that gauntlet, you're going to be able to earn seals and start ranking up in terms of the seals that you have. And it's going to go from kind of, I believe it's called Seal of the Blooded, which is the baseline, all the way up to Seal of the Worthy. And once you hit Seal of the Worthy, now you're ready, according to the game, to be able to compete in the leaderboards. So for myself, I'm probably just going to be trying to get Seal of the Worthy each week. But it's going to be
right
pretty
there
cool.
with you.
Seal of the Worthy is still something that's pretty cool that you can display to other players to let them know that, you're still pretty good at the leaderboards. It's just maybe you're not on the leaderboard itself.
I believe in you, Dan.
Yeah.
We believe in you.
Yeah, belief is great, but I know my limits. So
yeah. So lots of cool stuff for season 3. Gauntlet being a huge part of it. As we mentioned right at the beginning, that Gauntlet won't be at the start of the season, but we do plan. It is a season 3 thing. It is coming in season 3. We just want to make sure that players can actually grow their characters at the beginning of season 3. It's not like a speed run type of thing, just to jump into Gauntlet, especially on the first week of Gauntlet, if we were to have it with the launch of the actual season. So players will hear more news about when Gauntlet actually hits really soon. We'll have information on that, and we'll be sharing that with players. But thank you guys for sharing a little bit about some of those season 3 components. Of course, with a new season, there's a new season journey, and there is a new battle pass. There's a lot of feedback that we got from players and some data that we actually saw from players related to season journey and some optimizations that we've kind of made to make it a little bit more friendly, a little bit better for players specifically. I know one big thing that we ended up hitting on specifically was, for instance, like one of the components for season journey last season was like, hey, you need to kill 10 people in PvP, which made it a little difficult for some people, and we even saw that in some of our data from players.
We're looking over the data, we're listening to your feedback, and PvP objectives just aren't that popular. And so because we're always keeping an eye on improving the game and improving the objectives for the season journey, we decided to modify some of the PvP objectives that exist. And then there's one in particular that we ripped out. It just had such a low completion rate.
So there's been optimizations based off of player feedback and of course data that we've seen from that end. And then I know that one big thing is like some of the rewards associated with season journey. We have kind of amped them up a little bit specifically.
It's super important for us to make sure that the season journey is rewarding. I mean, it's one of the backbones of our season, and if folks feel as if they're not compelled to go in and participate, then that's a miss for us. So we went back and really took a close look at the rewards and amped them up in a couple of key ways. The first way we amped them up is we made sure that it was a good vehicle for earning some of those governing stones and tuning stones we talked about. And so you actually get an advanced look for some of those governing and tuning stones if you play the season journey. And so you'll get the drops a little bit sooner, and that'll give you a little more of a leg up with speccing out your Seneschal. The other thing we did is we looked at those later chapters, Champion and Slayer and Destroyer, and we said, wow, those still don't feel rewarding enough. I mean, we're asking players to do a lot there. We're asking them to go into the boss ladder, defeat bosses, really invest a lot of time. So we wanted to make sure those rewards felt meaty. And so we added a number of ancestral legendaries there, including some that are 925 eye power.
Nice.
So hopefully that will be something that folks will really enjoy, and get more folks wanting to take that journey with the season.
Also, something slightly related to season journey and feedback is we got some feedback that previously for our quest lines, you had to complete certain levels of season journey to even progress in the quest line. Got a lot of feedback. People didn't like it. We don't want people not to feel good with it. So starting season 3, you can just do it start to finish. There's no season journey break.
Yep.
Very
cool. So it's no longer says level up to chapter 3 of the season journey.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it's and again, community feedback has been so helpful for us, especially as we have been iterating on seasons and going from season to season. So it's been super great. Another big thing that's coming with at least season 3 is it's a cosmetic that I think a lot of players have been looking forward to. First, actually, let's actually jump into all this. Actually, can you throw that graphic back up? There we go. So there are a lot of new cosmetics coming. One big thing I know that was really popular with season 2 was the town portal skins.
Love those town portals.
Everyone is rolling with the blood portal. I am not rolling with the blood portal. I'm like the one person that's rolling with like the angelic wings one. If there's other people like that, like shout out to those people. You're part of my crew. But there are also cool new skins and of course new emotes that are coming with the new premium battle pass for Season 3. And then one item that I think we actually haven't really added to since launch is emblems specifically.
Yep.
Emblems are kind of like on your character title or on your character on the character bar for your screen. I have been rocking the Tree of Whispers one for a long time. I'm going to put it into retirement because we are adding new ones here. I believe we're adding, I think it's 3, I believe,
Yeah,
for this
so
season.
you will get 2 new emblems per your adventures in the season journey, and then 3 through the battle pass.
Awesome. So yeah, we're adding in emblems. I know that's something that people were asking about because we've always had the 3 at launch.
Yep.
And so this now gives you the opportunity of actually collecting additional emblems in Season 3. And of course, Season Blessings
Yes.
are also getting adjusted for the new season, because I know with the last season, of course, they were specifically catered towards Season of Blood.
Yep.
This one is, of course, being updated for Season 3, including items that affect like tuning stones, for instance,
Yep.
specifically for players. So Season Blessings will be getting updated for this new season. And then I know that one thing that people, and something I mentioned in the beginning, which is the boss ladder items, that is most definitely coming back for Season 3, so players can expect to have the opportunity of being able to tackle through the boss ladder. And we actually do have some optimizations that we'll be talking about here really shortly related to being able to jump into boss ladders. So yeah, lots of stuff for Season 3.
Yes. It's
a big
Tons
season.
of stuff for Season 3.
Yeah.
Biggest season yet for Diablo 4. And you know, we covered a lot. I'm looking forward to people jumping in. It begins on January 23rd, where players will be able to actually jump in and create new characters for the season. So Dan, Madeline, thank you guys so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then I know for the next part of our broadcast, we're actually going to use some amazing tech. First time we're doing this because we now have 2 different sets. One here in Albany, which is themed like Cathedral of Light. You know, we're in
Yep.
a colder environment. It is cold outside in Albany. I'm not used to that as a California person.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
I landed lots of snow. But it's like Cathedral of Light, Fractured Peaks, you
Yep.
know, kind of feeling. And of course, we'll be going to Irvine, where we're in like the, I hate to say the pits of hell. Irvine is not like hell, I promise. I lived there. But our studio is like that. And that we are going to be joined by Adam Jackson. Adam, hopefully you're there. There you are. Hello.
Hey, I hope you can hear me. I'm always paranoid.
I can hear you live from Irvine.
Cool.
And Adam, you know, they always call it the Adam and Adam show whenever you and I are on. And of course, we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the balance changes coming with Season 3 and what players can expect. And a little bit about some of the philosophy as well of what you have kind of, or what you want to actually present to the players of what they can expect going forward, especially with Gauntlet being involved. So do you want to take it away?
Yeah, totally. Got lots to talk about today, so I'm pretty excited. So I'm really going to be going over 3 different major topics today when we talk about what's coming in for Season 3 and beyond. So the first one is, I think, what everybody expects. We have some new class updates coming. A little bit of a caveat here, though. I'm not going to be going over every single note or every single update, but I am going to give you kind of a high level of what's coming for every class. But you'll definitely find out some more stuff when you look into the patch notes and see other things we're doing. And patch notes are going to be coming out very soon, like tomorrow.
Tomorrow, actually,
So,
yeah. They're
Yeah.
coming out tomorrow, so players can expect to see them tomorrow. We'll give you a preview today, but you'll see the full patch notes tomorrow.
Correct. So it'll be a preview, but you'll still get an idea of kind of what we're thinking and what we're doing. Next, I want to do a brief explanation of kind of how we currently view class balance. The game's gone through a lot. We've been out for a little while. We also have the Gauntlet coming. So, a lot of changes coming, and we're going to be adapting to it. And then the last thing is kind of a roadmap for our plans for seasonal updates going forward. I kind of want to give people some more concrete ideas of when we update and how we update. So first, we're going to start with the class updates. So first, for the Barbarian, we got a few things going on. The first one is some big improvements to Charge. Right now, Charge is, you need a bunch of different legendaries and other effects to make it really kind of sing and be powerful. And we're going to be moving a lot of power to the baseline skill from legendaries and other effects. It's going to do a lot more damage now than it did before. We might be insane, but I think it's really cool, and so we're going to do it. But you can see here, kind of season 2, what the damage numbers look like. Did like 1,200, and then season 3, it's like 12,000. So like 8x or something like that. So it's gonna do a lot of damage now, baseline. Of course, legendaries are adjusted to compensate, but yeah, you should have a lot more fun with it out the gate. We're also doing a lot of buffs to key passives, such as Walking Arsenal, to kind of keep them up to date with the one that most people pick, that shall not be named. And then also we're adjusting a lot of shouts. We got a lot of feedback that players don't really like feeling kind of mandatory that they put all the different shouts on their bar. I played a barbarian last season. I know how it feels. So we're trying to kind of walk this line where we want it to be fun and you can put all the shouts on your bar, but it's not required and you kind of feel like there's good reasons not to. So we've done some changes there. And, if I were a betting man, I'd say I'd put my money into, charge and maybe some key passives as far as things that I think you'll be happy to see. So I think you'll be kind of happy with our changes there.
Adam, whenever we have you on, you have to talk about class stonks, and this is
I
class
do like
stonks.
my stonks.
Yes.
So next, let's go over to the Sorcerer. Again, these aren't all the changes. These are just high-level stuff. First one is, we know that Sorcerer players have kind of had some pain trying to apply vulnerable to enemies, so we're giving it to Lightning Spear now. So just baseline, Lightning Spear, when it crits enemies, will now make them vulnerable. So you have another avenue that isn't Frost Nova to consistently apply it. We also have some buffs to various Paragon legendary nodes that you can look forward to that kind of open up or make some things stronger. And last but not least, for you Meteor fans, Meteor build is getting quite a few updates and buffs across the board. We also are giving them a new unique that kind of changes how you think about it and how it plays. That I'll be showing off in a little bit. So
Can't wait to see it. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, totally. So again here, Meteor players and Elemental Summoner players, like the ones that like to use the different conjurations. We got some stuff there in the legendary or the Paragon legendary node space that should make you happy. And next we've got the Rogue. So we've got quite a few changes coming to the Rogue. There's a lot of buffs to really underuse skill and skill upgrades. A lot of people use, Twisting Blades and Poison Imbue and things like that. And we're really targeting some of the things that people aren't using so much and giving them some love. In particular, we're targeting range builds to make them more viable and fun. I think it's the Precision Key passive is getting a bit of a rework, and a lot of stuff coming for things like Penetrating Shot and stuff like that. And we're also updating pretty much all the range uniques, including Windforce, Skyhunter, and Eaglehorn. They're going to be quite a bit more usable and powerful, I think. So here, again, some buffs coming really to range builds in general, and also Caltrops, which is a bit of an underused skill that we're giving some love. And then we got the Druid next. So here we've got some buffs coming to various spirit boons that aren't seen as much play as others. As an example, Prickle Skin is the one that gives you some thorns. The amount there is being increased by a lot. You can see here in Season 2, it gives about 300 at this level. And then Season 3, I think it's doing about 4x what it used to. So some big buffs coming to various spirit boons that are underused. And then also Rabies is getting quite a few upgrades. We got a new legendary coming in for Rabies. That's pretty neat. And then we also have a buff to enhance Rabies. So for all of you that love spreading your poisons among enemies, you're going to be a little bit happy in Season 3. So here again, we got some buffs. I put Rabies here, but also Lightning Storm, and we'll be showing off a new unique there too. I'm actually probably going to play Lightning Storm in Season 3 because it's got a really cool unique coming that we're going to so you'll have that to look forward to.
Yeah, I'm so excited for you to show these uniques. I think people are gonna probably cater their builds for those classes to some of those uniques.
Yeah, they're pretty. I mean, we have uniques coming for every class. We're just gonna be showing those two off today. Again, not everything, but they're pretty cool. Last but not least, we got Necromancer. So Blood and Iron Golems. So fun fact for those of you who didn't know, but the Bone Golem, when it attacks enemies with its normal attack, it actually cleaves and hits nearby enemies. And the Blood and Iron Golems didn't, and they were very jealous and unhappy. And so we just decided to give it to them. So now all your golems, your golem friends are going to AoE cleave when they attack. I didn't put in a note here, but also just golems in general are getting some buffs. And I think we even some other minion buffs across the board. But you can see those in the patch notes. And then a quality of life change coming is that Bone Prison, friendly players and your minions can now move through them. We've seen some situations, I know I've played it, where you'll Bone Prison an enemy and you're a minion build, and then your minions actually can't get to the enemy, or they want to go somewhere else and the Bone Prison actually blocks them. So now you and your friends will just be able to go through it. It'll be a lot more usable. And then we got a lot of Bone Spirit upgrades, including a redesign of one of the aspects, which is the aspect of Swelling Curse. I think Bone Spirit players are going to be really happy. So you can see here on the left is kind of the old version of Bone Spirit, and it basically dealt increased damage based on distance traveled. And the gameplay there was you want to be kind of far away from your enemy and then let it slowly creep towards them. It would do more damage. But it turns out Bone Spirit players really just kind of shotgun it and try and get next to enemies, so it wasn't really very usable or good most of the time. So now we changed it where this legendary gives you everything a Bone Spirit player would want. You get more crit chance on Bone Spirit, which means its CDR goes down thanks to its upgrades. And then when you hit enemies, your max essence is temporarily increased, which means more damage on Bone Spirit. So this really just kind of gives you everything that you want. And so here again, we got some buffs coming to Bone Spirit and to Golems for the Necromancers. So if you use either of those, I think you'll be eating pretty well this season. And again, these are just some examples. We got a lot more stuff in the patch notes for everybody. Next, let's go over the couple of new uniques. So the first one is that Meteor one I talked about. So this unique is the Starfall Coordinate. It basically being like a spender skill into a charge-based skill. So now you can actually run Meteor with other things like Fireball or Incinerate or Firewall, and it makes it into a very powerful cooldown-based skill that summons a bunch of meteors. It also synergizes with your enchantment, and you basically just drop a lot more meteors on around like carpet bombing enemies with them. It's pretty awesome. And then the next one is the new Druid unique. This is for Lightning Storm. Basically what this does is it makes your Lightning Storm grow quicker, so you can get up to that maximum amount. I think it's 4 or 5 stacks really quickly. And then also when your lightning bolts crit, an additional lightning bolt will come down and do more damage. And that additional lightning bolt also, it's still a lightning storm lightning bolt. So you get all of your synergies with all of your other effects. So basically it turns into lightning everywhere, which is just pretty cool when you combine it with all of the other lightning-based legendaries and stuff. Next, now that we're done with the class updates, I kind of want to talk a little bit about how we've been viewing class balance and how we're going to be thinking about going forward in Season 3 and beyond. So one of the things that we've been talking about a lot on the team is kind of thinking about how should we be updating the game when it comes to buffing and nerfing classes and builds, and then also how often should we update it. And I kind of want to get a little into the weeds here to understand where we're coming from. So first is that we want to balance kind of two competing concepts that are always at odds with each other that we believe players want that really make for a fun game and a fun experience, particularly in Diablo 4. But this is honestly kind of true for most games as far as when they update when it comes to balance. So the first one is we believe that players really want to feel like you all can have fun with powerful builds that you discover. Kind of a core part of playing these games is you think outside the box, or you discover something, or maybe even you follow a guide, but you find something that's really cool and awesome, and then you want to go wreck demons and kill stuff with it, right? You want to feel like you have this sense of permanence where you can make something, it's going to be cool, and you can go and have fun with it. But then on the flip side, here we also believe that players want the meta to refresh, so that the same things aren't obviously the best choices forever. Right? Looking back at Season 2, easy thing to point to is Ball Lightning, right? Ball Lightning was really fun and awesome. Newsflash, it was also kind of bugged. But, during Season 2, a lot of people had a lot of fun with it. But we believe that, if we just kept things like Ball Lightning or Hoda Barb or these things that are really powerful for many seasons over and over, not only Sorcerer players in the case of Ball Lightning, but even players of other classes would start to feel this kind of gravitational pull and a lot of pressure to play the things that are obviously more powerful than other things. And then players will start to feel pigeonholed into being forced to play very specific things. And so kind of this dichotomy of these two competing factors where you want to have a sense of permanence and finding things and having fun and not being afraid that Blizzard's going to take it away from you, but you also want to have a sense of, the same thing isn't strong forever, and you look at the leaderboards or you look on forums or wherever you look for your feedback, and everybody just is playing the same things, and you feel like not everything is viable, right? So in this vein, some of the larger changes that you're going to see in Season 3 that are kind of bug fixes or nerfs, and before a lot during BlizzCon and before we've talked about how you want to give players a heads up of what's coming. So these are the things you're going to see at the launch of Season 3 that are kind of they're having their power lowered. The first one is the Ball Lightning enchantment, or enhancement, sorry, is causing it to deal too much damage, obviously. The rogues Rogues have also been getting extra combo points via very specific unique interactions. That's made them very powerful. Twisting Blades, again on the Rogue, and Poison Imbue have had some interactions that we're cleaning up that makes it do more damage than was intended. The Druid very recently kind of climbed to the top of the power level in the game due to kind of an unfortunate interaction with Blurred Beast, where you can double dip damage. And really, we've had a couple cases like this earlier in the game, so we're redesigning this legendary power, where you can kind of apply a dot or some effect, and then something else does damage based on the dot, or some dealing damage on something else, and then that damage double dips, and then just goes into crazy town really quick. So we're nipping that in the bud. For the Barbarian, the Hammer of the Ancients, the Violent Hammer of the Ancients, which is one of the upgrades that you can get, was always being applied whether or not you had it, and we're cleaning that up. So basically, everybody would always take the other upgrade, and then they were getting both. And then Overpower, this is more of an oversight, not a bug, but it was kind of just too strong in general. If you remember when Season 2 launched, we redid all the combat math in the game, and back then Overpower, nobody was really playing it. And then we really wanted to give it some love, and we definitely did. So it's a little bit too strong right now, and so it's just getting toned down. And now next I want to talk about our season roadmap. Kind of, when we were talking about how we think about how often we should update the game, we wanted to let you, the community, know kind of what the conclusions we came to and what we're going to be doing. So right now our plan is to update the game twice per season when it comes to class balance and really just class updates. We're going to do one update at the launch of a season where you're going to see more kind of large scale things. The meta is kind of expected to shift a little more. And then we also plan to do a mid-season update, and that'll come somewhere around the center of the season, depending on the exact dates of the patch cycle. So you'll get a little bit smaller of an update there, but still something that'll, do a bunch of buffs, and we're going to detail what you can expect from these. So first, let's talk about season launch and what you can expect when a new season comes, when it comes to classes and systems, so on in balance. So the first thing is we're going to be giving you some new content. You can count on this. We're going to be giving new legendaries and uniques that are added to the game. The amount that we do can be variable, but what we can commit to is that every class should be getting something new in this space. So you can expect some amount of new legendaries and some amount of new uniques that'll give you new toys to play with. Next, there are balance updates. We'll be doing both balance and design updates for all the classes. And by design updates, I mean, some more in-depth things where we change around functionality rather than just moving numbers up and down. Again, the amount is variable here. It kind of depends on the needs of the game at the time and how much other stuff that we're doing. But as a general idea, just so you can know what to expect, we plan to do many buffs to things that are underperforming, a few nerfs to the things that are really overperforming, and then bug fixes, which can honestly be both buffs or nerfs, depending on what the actual bug is. And then we also plan to do other game updates. Our team isn't really only just doing classes. We also look at monster balance and feel. We do systems with drop rates and things like that. How quickly players can get things that let them have access to different types of content, all of that. So you can expect that at the beginning of a season. And then last but not least are larger updates and initiatives, right? These aren't guaranteed every season, but we want to launch these when they're ready. These are kind of, the big things that really shake up the game and change how players fundamentally interact with things. An example of some things here, or a couple things that we did in Season 2, we updated the resistance math and combat math to the game, and that was kind of a really big change of just how players interact with monsters and how they interact with their gear and stats and how they scale things. But we also do support for other things that might not seem so obvious, like content like Abattoir of Zir, where we have to go and look at the monsters, we have to look at the scaling, we have to when they do these things. So, we support all of those larger updates and initiatives as well, and you can expect these kinds of things going forward in seasons. But again, not every season. It just depends on when it's ready to come out. And next, let's talk about the mid-season patch and kind of what that looks like. So the first thing is we want to bring back previous season fan favorites. One of the nice things about a seasonal kind of model for a game is that we can experiment with things and then bring back the things that work. So an example of where we did this before was the Malignant Reigns. A lot of the Malignant Hearts in Season 1 had really cool designs that people really liked and got attached to. And we were able to bring that back in the form of unique reigns, right? Going forward, we think that the way that we bring back these designs could be legendaries, uniques, or even other ways, right? Like we can maybe just add it as Paragon nodes or passives or actives or other ways in skill tree. We don't really want to be limited to it must always be uniques or it must always be legendaries. But what we do want to limit ourselves to is that we definitely want to promise that we can do one thing per class. And we also think that we can pull from all seasonal designs, not only from the previous season, right? If the design of the power mechanic of a season doesn't really fit into something that's evergreen for players, then we don't want to be limited to trying to shoehorn it in. We may just bring back, maybe a lot of Malignant Hearts or a lot of Blood Seals people really got attached to. We don't want to be limited to like, oh, we can only bring back 4 or 5 things, and then we can never bring more. So we're just going to kind of look like what happened in the past and people liked, and then bring some of those things back. And then the balance updates, we also want to do this in the mid-season patch. The scope of this will be smaller compared to the beginning of the season. And we also want to do other game updates, like I said before, to monsters, systems, drop rates, and some of those things. We also want to try and mix in a lot of buffs for each class. And then we will be doing bug fixes, and these will be both buffs and nerfs. And we'll go into a little more detail of that in a minute. And then we're really going to try and hit this goal. No promises. These are famous last words for me. But, we want to try and do few to no nerfs that really aren't bugs. And our kind of thinking and philosophy here is that we know that, unlike the beginning of a season, players spent a lot of time farming for these things. And we don't want you to be scared of making powerful stuff and then knowing that we're going to take it away if it's too strong, right? And we want to have a sense of permanence when you start a season, that you can try and target something that's cool and then finish it. But sometimes we need to if something's way too far out of control, particularly now that we have the gauntlet coming in. And our plan is to really broadcast the nerfs, whether they're design or bug fixes, before the mid-season update, so that you have an idea of what's coming, so that you can adjust your builds and play accordingly. So now let's give a couple examples here of kind of, if these things had existed in Season 3 and beyond, how would we think about and how would we handle these in a mid-season patch? So, in Season 2, like I mentioned before, the Hammer of the Ancients, this upgrade, Violent Hammer of the Ancients, was just always being applied, right? Basically, overpower builds were just getting 30% more multiplicative damage for free. It was a bug, not intended at all. This is something that we would fix in a mid-season patch. So, like, if this happened in Season 3, you could expect that in the mid-season patch, we would bug fix this, and, that would be a nerf to that build. On the other hand, a little bit more complicated one. So if you remember Ossified Essence, you Necromancer players, this was your key passive, and it was really, really, really good. It basically says that your bone skills deal more damage based on each point of essence you have above 50. The gameplay here that we had intended was, you try and increase your mass essence, which is a fun little itemization game that you have. But then you also have some gameplay of trying to only cast and then get back to max as soon as you can. So you care about resource regen. Like, there's all these cool gameplay and itemization things going on. What we didn't anticipate, though, was that players would get as much max essence as they were able to, or that they were able to keep it as high as they were able to. And those were really just oversights on our part. So then in Season 2, we nerfed this by 50%, a whopping 50%. And I still think this is probably one of the strongest key passives in the game. That's how good it was. It's really good. But, it still keeps all the gameplay that it had before. So what if this existed in Season 3? Well, here, this would kind of be more of a question mark for us. We may fix it in the mid-season patch. We would definitely fix it at the start of next season. But technically, this isn't a bug. It's just something that is just really strong that we kind of had an oversight about. Here, we would be looking at, community feedback. How badly is it warping the meta? Are other builds of Necromancer really not able to function at all because this one is so much better? We'd be looking at more things like that are qualitative types of feedback, and then make a judgment call there. And, in these cases, this is where it gets really noodly. Sometimes we may be wrong, but we're going to really try and lean on the side of not changing unless we really feel like it's needed to keep the game healthy. So, again, kind of a recap, a TLDR. First, our strategy here with players is to communicate early and communicate often. We want to let you know, particularly when it comes to nerfs, what's coming and really what we're thinking. And then again, at the start of the season, you can expect some new content in the form of legendaries and uniques. We'll also be getting some more in-depth balance updates, including design updates to things that we feel we could do better at. Lots of buffs, few nerfs, but bug fixes that are both buffs and nerfs to keep the game in a healthy state. And then in the mid-season patch, you get new content in the form of previous fan favorites from other seasons. And then we will be doing a balanced patch. It'll be a bit smaller. It'll be mostly buffs, and then bug fixes that are both buffs and nerfs. And hopefully few to no design nerfs is what we're going to try and commit to. And so again, the reason why we're doing this is we really want you to know kind of where we're thinking, and we want to try and commit to concrete things when we can. And this is something that we feel we can commit to you as far as what we bring to Diablo 4 going forward. Again, last thing is that, we are open to feedback on this. This isn't set in stone that forevermore we'll be only doing 2 updates per season when it comes to balance. We're trying to find that right amount of time where you feel like you can experiment and have fun, but the same thing isn't strong forever. So, please give us your feedback. Let us know what you think. But this is how we're going to start, and then we're going to go from here. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adam, for going over all the balance changes coming for Season 3, along with the roadmap, which is really important. And so that's a big thing that we will make sure we do, is obviously communicate often, communicate early, specifically about all the balance changes that may occur with the start of a season, and of course with that mid-season patch. And just for like better understanding within the community, if you follow version numbers of our updates, because we usually do client patches with big patches, usually mid-season patches land around the 0.3 variant of a patch, if you want to go specifically in that. We do have a lot of other quality of life items that are also coming within Season 3 that we do want to get into before we jump into Q&A. And we did want to tackle some of these because these are really big, and these are based off of players and what they're telling us, and of course things and improvements that we've already talked about beforehand that are now actually coming into Diablo 4. One big thing that I know that we mentioned in one of our prior streams with a campfire chat, Mr. Joe Shelley, our game director, actually brought up, which was Hell Tides. Hell Tides was something we learned within Season 2 and Season Blood is everyone really enjoyed Blood Harvest, and Blood Harvest was always up. Hell Tides, though, were kind of timed in specific moments, and Hell Tides was something that we wanted to improve upon for players, and now Hell Tides will actually be up pretty much all the time, so players will be able to actually jump into Hell Tides whenever they need to. There is a 5-minute break to kind of reset the zone and stuff, but every hour you will be able to jump into a Hell Tide, which is great. So it's more opportunities to earn cinders, and of course more opportunities to earn and obtain loot, or even things like living steel and stuff to kind of go through the Uber boss ladder, which is great. The other thing is, and this is a controversial topic because I don't know how people actually pronounce this, but I've always called it WASD. Other people call it WASD. Some people call it WASD.
We need a poll up stat.
I almost want to put a poll up within Twitch chat. Maybe you guys can chime in here and let me know what you prefer calling it. I'm going to call it WASD, but WASD controls are coming to Diablo 4. This is actually something we talked about way back at the launch of the game. We heard a lot of players asking specifically for additional control opportunity or options for them, and this actually is a great feature that Drew, I know, who's on the D4 team. Shout out to Drew. I know he's watching, and he's here in this office. But at least for WASD, it offers more accessibility options for players, which is great to see. So WASD controls are going to be in Diablo 4, and this is something we've been talking about.
Yeah. We're also really lucky it came online just as we were putting all those hazards in the dungeons.
Exactly.
So now, the players have even more precise control to avoid.
WASD feels very good with the trap.
WASD, however you want to pronounce it, that is going to be.
They like WASD.
Oh, chat likes WASD according to Rich.
It's okay to be wrong.
But yeah, it is coming to the game. And what's really great about this as well is that it is customizable. You can actually change things out and stuff if you'd like. So really happy to see it. And we're happy to hear feedback from players and their experiences with it once they jump into Season 3. And then, of course, we have a new respec mode coming to the skill trees.
Yes.
This is respecing on skill trees has always been a little difficult, and now there's a more optimized way of being able to do so. Another big community item that a lot of players have been asking for. This kind of goes hand in hand with the opportunity of actually taking your whole Paragon board and completely resetting it before, as opposed to doing it one by one that we had beforehand.
It's a lot less finicky now.
There's more opportunities to actually respec and do it in a much more organized fashion with this. And then this has been a huge one. This is specifically for console players. I probably get this question maybe once every single day about gold trading. Obviously, more gold is in the Diablo 4 economy or ecosphere with Season, especially since Season 2. And for console users, trading gold has been very difficult. It's been slow. It's you could be there for quite a while trying to trade a significant amount of gold. And so the gold trading UI has been updated for console users, so they'll be able to actually trade gold without having to maybe spend 5 to 10 minutes doing so in one trade. So I know that is a big thing that players have been asking for, so we're happy that's actually being included. And then this one is also kind of calling back to what Joe Shelley had brought up in a prior Campfire chat, which was higher item scaling in World Tier 4. I think he used a really good example of how World Bosses was kind of like, hey, you get 925 gear off of them, and at times it feels like maybe that's like the most optimized way of doing it, and it didn't feel very rewarding in other types of activities such as like Nightmare Dungeons, for example. So higher item scaling in World Tier 4 is actually coming into Season 3 and going forward for Diablo 4. So even when you're doing like higher Nightmare Dungeons, you're going to have way more opportunities of actually obtaining eye level 925 gear, as opposed to before, where it was a much lower chance and it felt like you should be doing other types of activities beforehand. So making sure that there's more options available as opposed to just kind of pigeonholing yourself into maybe timed world bosses and stuff like that from that end. And then this one is a point of feedback that we've gotten from a lot of players. And this is something that we kind of optimized within Season 2 last year. Things like the Living Steel buff based off of community feedback was really big. And so we're actually increasing opportunities to earn the Beast and Ice summoning items. So this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier in our stream, where with the boss ladder, there will be more opportunities for players to kind of jump into those. So there will be additional summoning items for Beast and Ice, which will then, of course, help you eventually get to Uber Duriel. And this goes hand in hand with some of the Living Steel buffs that we ended up doing in Season 2 within Helltide. So a lot of quality of life updates, and there's additional ones that players will end up seeing within the patch notes that will be releasing tomorrow. So you should check out the patch notes. They'll be hitting on Diablo4.com. Specifically for all the details and all the items that even Adam Jackson was talking about earlier. Now we come to the part where I always mess up names, but actually before we do that, I'm breaking order. Our wonderful production group here is going to be like, "What's wrong with you, Adam?" One thing I did want to call out is we actually have a new promo for Twitch starting with Season 3, and that is our Support a Streamer promo. We had the Support a Streamer for Season 1. We have it again for Season 2. It is a new amount that players can actually earn. This time it's different. Before we only had a select group of streamers. I think it was like around like 2,000 streamers that signed up and opted in. Now it's for any streamer that streams Diablo 4. Thank you, Twitch, for making the engineering updates to allow for it to be just across the whole entire category. Any streamer that is streaming Diablo 4, if you're a viewer and you happen to be watching them, you can either purchase a sub from them or gift a sub to a total of 2. So it could be 1 gifted, 1 purchase, or 2 gifted, and you'll actually end up earning the amount as well. You just need to make sure that your Battle.net account is actually linked with your Twitch account, and you are watching a participating Diablo 4 streamer. It'll note it on their channels and stuff for you to earn that mount. So that is coming, and there'll be a blog later today about that specific Twitch Support a Streamer program that's going to be launching with the start of Season 3 on January 23rd. So make sure to check it out, and I believe it's actually going to be running for quite a while, like a month or so. Oh, nice. So players will be able to kind of take part in that from their end. But now our favorite part, which is the Q&A. And we're actually going to be going back and forth between Irvine and here in Albany, because Adam Jackson, of course, is still with us to answer any specific questions related to class and class balance that players may have. But I know one question that, as we queue up questions specifically from our side and have my live feed right here, will attempt to not butcher names. Maybe I will. I will. Spoilers. But one question that we do have is, how have the team's thoughts changed in regards to balance since Diablo 4's release? This is a question for Mr. Adam Jackson in Irvine. If you could help us with that answer.
Yeah, let me think. It's a deep question, but I think, okay. So I guess we'll start with, because there's like a long history of balance, right? I think there's actually a very good story, and we could start even before launch and going into launch and how we thought about things. But I think we'll start with like season 1 and the transition from kind of the launch version of the game into our first season, right? Obviously, when we launched the game, we had some pretty benign ideals, I think, of, hey, we want all the classes to be within a certain power range of each other, and everything should be viable for everyone, and, basically everything feels good, and there's a lot of different ways to play, right? And then one of the issues that we ran into this season 1 that I think is interesting to talk about is we realized that in our quest to make items and item stats really fun and powerful and interesting, we had over budgeted on quite a few of them. And I think just in the interest of time, I'll pick on cooldown reduction. It's a very scary stat to me and the team. So, we realized in the launch version game, the cooldown reduction was too high, right? And so players are basically able to solve cooldown reduction, and use that with air quotes, and get to a point where they had very low, if any, cooldowns on a lot of their skills. And this was true for many stats, not just cooldown reduction. But one of the problems that we knew was going to come up that was a kind of future us problem, or really almost immediately us problem, is that if we let players solve these things, whether it's defensive stats, cooldown reduction, resource, whatever it may be, and we let them solve it only in gear, then we're going to get to a state where we can't give exciting things to you anymore that you're going to be really happy about and that will feel impactful, because you just got it all in gear, right? And while gear does need to be cool and interesting, if you completely solve these things, I can't give you a legendary power, or I can't give you something late game that really buffs and changes your build in a meaningful way if you got it from just one source. And so then we launched season 1, and we're like, okay, we're going to kind of eat our vegetables here, and we're going to preserve the long-term health of the game, but we're going to do these very necessary nerfs, and there are quite a few, right? And even at the time we did this, we knew, we tried to mix in a bunch of buffs and, try and make it feel good, but we just didn't hit the mark, right? We kind of failed in that endeavor. We did, do the necessary things to bring the game in a long-term healthy state, but it came at the cost of player fun and player sentiment. And so you went from the beginning preseason to season 1, and the game overall just got quite a bit less fun because you were just less powerful and you weren't compensated enough from the player point of view. And so we kind of learned a lesson there of like, we need to be a little bit more thoughtful and careful of when we roll out these things and how we roll them out, and then also how we communicate it, right? Because we didn't really tell people the intricacies of these problems. We just came out with a patch and let you figure it out, and that didn't go too well, right? So then in season 2 came around, and we did a big combat math update to the game. We were kind of a little worried because we had to kind of thread this needle of, we also were nerfing player power because we changed a lot of multiplicative synergies to be additive, but we wanted to do it in a way where you felt more powerful and it felt more fun and fair. So we had to do a lot of more work on the monster side and balance monsters to the new expected player power when, vulnerable is not always multiplicative and all of these other crazy things going on. And I think we threaded that needle really well. A little bit to my surprise, I'll be honest. I was a little scared going into it because it's just such a big update, right? And then we also decided during season 2, when it came to balance, that instead of trying to, nerf and whack-a-mole things that are really strong and immediately take them away, because it's not supposed to be that way, we just kind of let it ride. And so that's why you saw things like, Ball Lightning, Hoda Barb, the Druid, Poison Druid, Rogue combo, like many classes had just something that was kind of crazy. And we just let it go. But even now, towards at the end of season 2, we're seeing that, some people are starting to be a little upset, like, hey, these same builds are just killing everything. And if I want to do the really hard content, I have to be one of these things because that's the only thing that works. And obviously, we don't want that to be the future of the game forever. And so now we're trying to come up with a more balanced approach of how we see these things. And that's why, again, I was saying kind of in my presentation, we're thinking a lot of, how often do we update actually really matters, I think, from your point of view as a player, because that determines how long you are safe to do something that feels crazy and awesome and powerful. But then also how we update the game matters as well, of like, hey, are we okay with, 1 or 2 things being really strong for a while, or what is the range that something can be too strong before we consider it a problem? That's another subject that maybe I'd like to go into in the future, or more in depth in the future, but I think that kind of answers the question. It's already a little long-winded, so I'll leave it there.
All good. No, I appreciate it, Adam. And so we're going to go through some additional questions. I might be going back to Adam, but I know one question that we at least have gotten regarding Season 3 is, this is from Ice Vixen. I'm attempting. What about group play in vaults? How does that specifically work? Because obviously there's like the warding buff and everything. How do rewards kind of associate with that?
Right. So you are able to group up and play through a vault, and yeah, it behaves pretty much like any other Nightmare dungeon. And so there are instances where if you leave the dungeon, you will lose the buff. So we're trying to avoid some cases where players might try to cheat their way to the end.
Yeah.
But overall, we're trying to be as supportive as possible for group play.
Awesome. Makes sense. And then I know this is a question back for Adam, a popular question regarding minion builds and plans for minion builds. I know this one has been brought up in chat quite often. What are the plans for like maybe Necromancer or Druid minion build specifically?
Yeah, I definitely don't get asked this all the time. So let me think. So we know the feedback that people want minion builds to be kind of more impactful, and these are now I'm kind of going into my opinion, but I think a lot of that feedback comes from a combination of, they don't feel necessarily maybe as powerful as other builds, which we can and we do. And if you've noticed in our past patches, we've consistently been number buffing minion builds, and even this patch does have some number buffs in that realm. But I think a more complicated, difficult problem to solve is kind of the relationship between the player and the minion, and making the minions feel really cool and awesome, and your investment into them really pay off in a way that is kind of more visceral. That is a harder problem to solve that requires it's in my mind, and I'm not promising anything, but these are things like rethinking of how the Book of the Dead upgrades work, and that relationship between sacrificing and minion upgrades, and really trying to make them do more visually, I think, cool and awesome things, and maybe more reacting to you, and so you feel like they're doing a lot more on their own a little bit. That's kind of the direction that we think. We don't have anything to announce right now as far as that. And Druid Companions, I think, are kind of in a similar vein, even though they don't have quite the same support in fantasy that Necromancer does, because they don't have a Book of the Dead, for example. But I think players really just want this visceral feeling, like I've got my gain with me, and we're all going and messing with stuff. So we're doing number buffs now. It is a thing that we are looking at. I don't have any promises of when, because again, this is something that I think is a little more difficult to tackle, and we have other things that we're tackling that are a little more difficult coming in the near future. But it is something that we know of, and that will definitely be coming. I just don't know when.
Awesome, I appreciate it. A question related to Uber uniques on Uber vaults. Is that something that players can find there, or what can they find in that specifically?
So Uber uniques are still the domain of Duriel at this point. That's going to be your best shot for getting Uber uniques. But we still wanted to make the Uber vault rewarding. And so for the Seneschal construct, we've actually created several unique tuning stones, which really we haven't given away too much information about. But defeating Uber Malphus is going to be the only way to earn those.
Awesome. Yeah. So players will be able to get really, really powerful, unique tuning stones specifically from those. And I will spoil it a little bit. We did technically have PC Gamer did a good interview with Sean, and I know it was kind of revealed specifically in one of the shots there. So if people want a sneak peek of what one does, there is an opportunity to actually check it out there. So people can actually see it there. Another question back for Adam. This is another big question within chat. Oh, by the way, Beefcake Monster asked that last question. I forgot names, but this one is actually asked by a lot of people, so just many names specifically.
Sure.
Snapshotting. Snapshotting is something that kind of appeared, especially as players were going through Abattoir of Zir. Do we have any plans regarding snapshotting and what we might do for that?
Yeah, we do have things coming. I don't have anything to announce today. It won't be at the beginning of Season 3, but we do have fixes coming for snapshotting. We're aware of the problem. It came on a little hot at the end of Season 2, but yeah, we've talked about it. We've seen it. We kind of know the intricacies of it, and we'll be taking a look at it in the near future.
Awesome, I appreciate it. A question that I've also seen a few times in chat about Zoltan Kuhl, funny enough, do we encounter Zoltan Kuhl in this?
Do not encounter him. He is still dead. No digging up his head this time, but you will hear his voice. We have several lore books that drop throughout the vaults, and generally his presence, and Ayujan speaks of him quite often.
Of course, we have to hear Zoltan Kuhl and his wonderful voice of talking down to everyone. So that makes perfect sense. I know a question regarding the vault specifically. Is that an area that players can actually maybe potentially level up Paragon glyphs, or is that still something that is tied to Nightmare Dungeons?
So the Nightmare versions of Vault should work the same way as Nightmare Dungeons in that respect. And
Awesome.
you should be able to level up your glyphs there too.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that a lot of people were hearing about the Nightmare Vaults and they're going like, well, does that serve also the same, like, can I do almost like get both objectives in one type of thing, which you now can? And that was from Galley055 who asked that question specifically. And then I know a question we have from UN Tanks Up. Bad. Terrible, Adam. How many times can we do the gauntlet in a week?
So we have not restricted players' access to the gauntlet. I think it's the type of content we want people to try and master. And in order to be able to do that, you've got to be able to practice and you've got to be able to improve. And so really you can play it as much or as little as you want. Which is a change, again, from something like a Nightmare Dungeon where you need a sigil. The only requirement right now is that you are World Tier 4 and that you think you're ready.
Yeah. So again, you can jump into these specifically before, gauntlets specifically before hitting level 100. It's usually preferred to go in at level 100, but you can try tackling it a little bit earlier if you want. And you can do it as many times as you want, which is really cool. So I'm excited to see how players optimize because, of course, they change every single week and they get to kind of like learn and they get to kind of maybe modify based on how many people are within their party, which is really, really cool. A question that we also have been getting regarding some of the I lost my question now. I'm so bad at this. The itemization updates that we have talked about in the past. A lot of people are asking like, hey, is that still on track for season 4? This one was specifically from Fermel. Yes, that is still on track for season 4. We have a really massive itemization update coming specifically for that season. And we'll have more news to share as we get closer to season 4. But for right now, we don't have news to share with the community for season 3 regarding that, but it will be pretty significant, and we'll be talking about that more in a future stream here coming down the line. And then let's see, any updates regarding like some of the group finders or social features? I know that is also another big question that a lot of players have been asking over the last couple of months, specifically about, hey, are we making any changes and everything towards that? And really, this is something that we addressed at BlizzCon as well. I think Tiffany answered this one, where it is something that we're looking into, and the team is obviously seeing the feedback, and it's something that we're planning on working and making better through the lifetime of Diablo 4. So players can expect to see better and more optimizations towards the social features and the friend finder specifically from that end. Let's see. Do we get more sources of Uber uniques for this specific season? Really, the best way of grabbing Uber uniques is through the boss ladder for sure, through Uber Duriel. And there are more, you can, of course, find Uber uniques anytime throughout the game. It's just there are higher chances through Uber Duriel, and that is still the same specifically for this season. And there, of course, now more opportunities to go into that fight now, since we've like amped up a lot of the drops specifically around like Living Steel from season 2 to the Beast and Ice summoning items now with season 3. So players will actually be able to kind of jump into Uber Duriel specifically from that end. Let's see. I know we get a lot of questions about field of view. From players asking like, hey, is there any update of like, are you guys planning on actually increasing the field of view? Right now, we don't have any plans towards that. It's just something that we've been hearing a lot from players. There's a lot of work that, of course, has to go into something like that. But whenever we do have an update, we'll make sure to actually provide that specifically on that end. Codex updates is another big thing because people have been asking about the Codex updates. I'm just like kind of shotgunning. I'm seeing like words appear in chat. I'm like, oh yeah, that thing. that is something that we talked about before, and that work is currently underway, and that will also be part of a future season. And it is a massive update. It's something that we had talked about beforehand on previous streams, which was kind of helping out with inventory, making sure those specific aspects were like pulled out of inventory and kind of stored within the character or cataloged within the character. So we will have more info on when that actually ends up hitting soon. But there's a ton of things that are coming to D4 to help address a lot of some of this community feedback specifically on that end. And then question regarding Gauntlet.
Okay.
This is from RM Dragonheart. Will you be able to inspect the top players in Gauntlet and see what builds they're potentially using?
So you will be able to inspect the top players from Gauntlet. There'll be a link from the leaderboard to a player's profile. And you'll be able to see what they're playing currently. But we do not save a snapshot right now of what they played at that moment.
Got it. Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to see kind of like, top builds and stuff like that, you have the opportunity to, but it does, if they happen to change their build overnight or something like that, it's going to grab whatever that existing build is specifically from that end. And then I know we've gotten, or this was a question from Max, not TV, regarding Malphus. Do we have any plans of Malphus becoming maybe potentially an endgame boss outside of the season? Or are we planning on maybe, introducing it in like a boss ladder in the future?
Right. So every season, much as Adam described for Power, we take a look at those elements that we really liked from a previous season to see if we can bring them forward. Certainly people on the team like fighting Malphus. Hopefully y'all enjoy fighting Malphus too. If you like fighting him enough, then perhaps in the future, we could bring him over to the boss ladder.
Yeah,
but,
just like Farshawn.
Yeah, but we're no commitments to that quite yet.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I know we went through some questions here, and we're a little over beyond. We were aiming for 90 minutes. We're a little beyond. It's totally fine though. Really appreciate. Yeah, a lot of stuff in season 3. Really appreciate everyone providing questions. And if you have additional questions, of course, make sure to ask them over social media, Reddit, forums. We're always checking those out, and of course, we'll try to address them in either future streams or immediately if we can after the stream. Again, patch notes for season 3 and the new 1.3 patch are going to be hitting tomorrow. So make sure to check Diablo4.com specifically for those patch notes. It's a big one. Always a big patch notes when you start off a new season specifically. And we have a lot of other activities that are going on within the Diablo universe. Diablo 3 started their new season just a couple weeks ago. D2, repping D2 today. There we go, D2R. D2, I know we've gotten a lot of questions about when the next ladder will be. We'll have more news on that in February. We don't expect a ladder reset to happen until February, but we'll give you a specific date as we get closer to February. Of course, DI has a ton of new updates as well. They had a big update before the holiday regarding familiars being added to the game, and they've been expanding on that. So there's a ton of stuff coming to the Diablo universe. D4, even earlier this month, we talked about how we will have ray tracing and a lot of those features coming into Diablo 4 here really soon. So players should expect to see that within a future update really soon. So I'm super excited for those items. But lots of stuff within the Diablo universe, and of course, season 3 hitting on January 23rd. I just want to thank Madeline, Dan, Adam Jackson from Irvine. I'm looking forward to flying back and saying hi again, Adam. But I want to thank you guys for of course joining us on this special developer update live stream for season 3. And just a heads up for people that are watching, our friends at Xbox are actually doing an Xbox Developer Direct that's going to be starting here really soon. So make sure to check that out on the Xbox channel on Twitch and on YouTube. And of course, we'll be raiding into some of our wonderful Diablo partners on YouTube and Twitch. So make sure to tune into them immediately after the stream. But thank you guys again for tuning in for the developer update for Season the Construct, which is launching on January 23rd. Patch notes tomorrow on Diablo4.com. And yeah, thank you guys from Albany. Really appreciate it.
See you guys in game.
Have a good one.